As mentioned in my previous video, 2014 was a year of some very disappointing movies, but luckily it was also the year of extremely enjoyable ones. Here are my top 10 most enjoyable movies of 2014. Now these aren't the best movies or most well made, but rather just the ones that are easy to watch regardless of what kind of mood you're in, and after they're done you can enjoy watching them over again. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. After the success of The Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the sequel had some very serious hype built up for it, which very much delivered on it. Not only is the storyline it follows even more interesting as we get invested in the struggles of the surviving humans and the new society of the apes emerging, we also get a really emotional attachment to a non-human main character in Caesar. The environment they are in looks amazing, with the ruined man-made structures with the plant life growing all over it, and the special effects for the apes is extremely well done. Another great part is, even if you didn't like or haven't seen the first movie, the sequel can easily stand on its own and doesn't rely on the first movie for making the viewer understand what's happening. Here's hoping the third installment is just as good, if not better. The Lego Movie. I was really skeptical at first coming into this movie. I thought we were just going to get one big commercial for Lego, and all the jokes would be aimed at mostly child-based audience. Instead, this was a really thought-provoking and fun story. The animation was great, all the characters were entertaining and had very distinct personalities. I'm sure this movie did help a great deal in boosting the sales of Lego, but it did it for the right reasons. It's telling us that our own creativity is more important than being perfect, and we should be different if that's what we want to do. This was an extremely fun movie that almost anyone could enjoy. Everything in it was awesome.
Batman, awesome!
How to Train Your Dragon 2. This movie was another excellent example of how to do a sequel right. How to Train Your Dragon 2 took all the colorful and amazing imagery of the first movie and put it on an epic scale. The dragons are bigger, the view of the world around them is bigger, and we get a bigger reveal into the history of the people in this world and where the future is headed. I loved how every character in this movie is given their own moments to stand out, and the main characters never try and make everything about them. Instead, they show how it's important to try and help everyone. If you enjoyed the first movie or other DreamWorks films, this is a must-see. Snowpiercer. This was one of the most unique dystopian sci-fi films I've ever seen. Coming out of a Korean film studio and starring Chris Evans as well as some other well-known actors, this movie gave a very interesting look to how a film from Korea could be made with a non-Asian film audience in mind, but in the style of one that normally would be. The story is simple enough to begin with, but becomes a lot more complex along the way as more is revealed to them about the truth of how they've survived through this new ice age and the choices they would now have to make if they wanted to keep surviving it. Though the film may not be for everyone, I would recommend everyone to see it at least once, to appreciate the depth and complexity this whole society is living in these different environments, even though it's in one extremely small area.
Destiny.
The Hobbit: Battle of the Five Armies. The final installation of the Hobbit trilogy, I'd have to say, is probably the least enjoyable of the three movies, but nonetheless was still a very enjoyable movie. The movie still delivers an amazing view of the environment which it was filmed in, and the detail put into how everyone looks pays off greatly. We get to see the payoff of everything that's been building up to this point. Thorin's battle between his desires to take back what was stolen and its duty of honor, the patience of the elves being pushed even further by the stubbornness of the dwarves, and the orcs finally becoming ready to strike after preparing their armies. The ending battle scene was filled with so many unique fights that it kept it from becoming repetitive. We got to see elves, dwarves, humans, orcs, trolls, bats, goblins, wargs, and more. The CG has problems at times, but the movie doesn't dwell on the noticeable parts long enough to have any real issue with. All in all, it was a very good movie to end the trilogy with.
Will you follow me? One last time.
Fury. Not since Saving Private Ryan has there been a movie that showed this level of gritty and gory detail of World War II on the big screen. The movie really gives a realistic view into how physically and emotionally draining it was to be living day after day in a position where you would most likely be killed, and doing what has to be done to get through that. Unlike Saving Private Ryan, where you see the main characters carrying out what's seen as a noble mission, this movie shows the main characters just doing their jobs, despite what good or bad things have to be done to achieve it. The movie's ending comes off as somewhat unrealistic, but overall the movie's brutal action and the actors' emotional betrayal of the soldiers makes an extremely powerful and enjoyable film.
$1.35 a day, right? Best job I ever had. Best job I ever had.
Best job I ever had.
Captain America 2: The Winter Soldier. After we were all blown away by how awesome the Avengers movie was, we knew the second Captain America movie would have a lot to live up to, but thankfully, it did. What was most interesting for this movie was the transition it had to take from the first, which was more of a war movie than a superhero one. In The Winter Soldier, it has Captain America fighting in completely different environments for completely different reasons. It keeps the same fast-paced action fight scenes from the first movie, and adds a whole enemy within intrigue storyline to really show how well Captain America can overcome all adversaries he has to deal with. With more of the humor we had from the Avengers of Captain America trying to adapt to the future world he's now in, the movie is entertaining on all levels, and Captain America remains one of the best parts of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. X-Men: Days of Future Past. We've been waiting some time for Bryan Singer to return to directing X-Men movies, and it's a wait that has paid off and then some. Taking the retro style and tone of the X-Men First Class movie, and combining with the sleek and dark sci-fi-like feel of the original X-Men movies, Days of Future Past reaches the pinnacle for the X-Men series. Normally a movie about time travel can get over-complex, but Days of Future Past manages to keep both sides set to two different major goals: past discovering how to stop the future from happening, and the future trying to survive for that to happen. This keeps it feeling like two different movies at once, which stops it from ever getting boring. This movie would be a perfect way to finish the X-Men movie storylines, as it's now hopefully the next installment won't be another X-Men 3.
Please. We need you to hope again.
Interstellar. This movie was more of an experience than a film. Interstellar is the 2001 A Space Odyssey for our generation. Constantly building suspense, this sci-fi has some amazing visuals that'll suck you in like a black hole. For a movie that's almost 3 hours long, it never feels that way. It could have gone for another half hour and I wouldn't have minded. The level of desperation and emotion that characters go through is an intense experience, just as much as seeing the vast expansion of the universe they're traveling in. A precaution going into this movie would be try not to think so much of the science and the physics that goes on in it. It's movie science, not real science. The best way to enjoy this movie is to try and see it on the biggest screen you can and just let yourself be pulled in by its gravity.
We'll find a way. We always have.
Guardians of the Galaxy. At this point, it's starting to seem like Marvel Studios can do no wrong. Guardians of the Galaxy was not only the most enjoyable movie I've seen in 2014, but may well be the most enjoyable of all the Marvel films. With the film's source not being nearly as well known as the other comic book-based films, it manages to create a story that's not only filled with some awesome action and fight scenes, but some of the funniest dialogue to come out of a movie that isn't a comedy. The retro 80s charm of it works really well to make the movie stand out and to be enjoyed by audiences of any ages. If you haven't already seen it, I can't say enough about how much you should.
What is that?
It's a bomb.
And you leave it lying around?
I was gonna put it in a box.
What's a box gonna do?
You just want to suck the joy out of everything.
That's it for this list on 2014. Here's hoping 2015 can be just as good.